Welcome back to Humankind, which is only days away from its full release, yet there are still a number of key things that we don't know about this game, or that we haven't had a chance to play with during the Victor Open Dev or the closed beta. Today I'm going to take you through the top 5 things that we don't yet know about Humankind, despite it releasing later this month in August of 2021. First up, we don't know a lot about the last era of cultures. They have been revealed outside of the betas, however. We know, for example, that we could be playing as the Swedes, the Japanese, the Australians, the Americans, but what we don't know fully is how these cultures play out in Humankind and how all of their different benefits, traits, emblematic units, and quarters will play out in the game. Remember, we didn't get to experiment with these during the closed beta, which was the last time we got to play Humankind, and I believe the developers have since confirmed there won't be another opportunity for us to play it before it releases on the 17th of this month, which makes a lot of sense. But it's important to note that we don't yet know the end game. We don't know fully the kind of technology, weapons, cultures that we'll have to play with, and how they'll interact with one another. So it's really important, and this springboards me into my second point, which is about the final era as a whole. It hasn't fully been set. It hasn't fully been revealed. We don't fully know as much about it as we would like in terms of what it's going to be called, how long it may last. We're assuming it'll be roughly the length of all the previous ones, but we don't know. There could be more of an emphasis on modern day, particularly in scenarios where we're playing a longer lobby in Humankind. Perhaps it's a different game setting. Perhaps we're playing in some kind of marathon speed. The final era is very, very important, and in many ways, of course, it will help shape, or at the very least cement, your victory condition, bearing in mind that all victory conditions and scores are managed under Humankind's fame system. If you want to hear more about that, I've already covered that in a separate video. Third up, we haven't actually had the map manuscripts revealed, and this is really important to note that during the beta, and indeed in this gameplay you're watching right now, the map was fixed, and I've had many comments and questions from lots of you guys in the YouTube comments section, and a couple of messages on Twitter about it as well, and the answer is, unfortunately, no. We don't know what kind of controls we're going to have over the maps. We don't know, for example, if there are going to be maps that mimic the real world, like a true Earth map, or a map of the Americas, those kinds of things. We're not sure if they're in the game. We're also not sure to what level or extent we as normal, more perhaps casual players will be able to have over the map and over the landscape. What kinds of things will we be able to toggle? What level of detail can we go into, for example, with the spawn rates for resources, strategic resources, and so on and so forth? Can we control the sea level and rivers and levels of geographic variety from flat plains to huge mountains? What kind of controls will we have? And moreover, will there be any kind of map editor, or will that be left external, or at least slightly external to the game in terms of modding? We're not 100% sure on that yet. And that's actually sort of another sub-point here that I'll just sort of tack on to the side of the map manuscripts one. We don't fully know to what extent modding will be implemented into the game. However, we do understand there will be native modding support from day one, which is not quite sure how that will play out, but that will tie into the kind of maps, potentially cultures, that we can play as and develop as a community at large. Fourthly, we don't fully know the final values for anything. And you can see here on screen the values of my different districts, the values of my tiles, my holy site. We don't know if these numbers will change following the beta, following all of that data that the developers had over how we played as players, what we favored, what we didn't like, what we abused. Of course, as I've already discussed, Humankind is going to be a very difficult game to balance with over 1 million different combinations of cultures. And undoubtedly, even more than that, exponentially a combination of different adjacencies and all sorts of bonuses you can get in the game. However, we do expect there to be some tuning to values. And I don't just mean tile yields, I mean emblematic quarters, I mean the strength of emblematic units. One thing that I'm particularly interested in terms of how they're going to tweak and tune values, is religion and influence. Because in my experience, and from talking to a lot of you guys from your experiences as well, I note that influence was one resource that we felt it was quite easy to snowball. Now, granted, that they all are to a certain extent, but I believe as a community we really felt that influence was quite easy to get and far too easy to exponentially grow. Religion, another really difficult one, because it is of course tied to fame, to score, and to victories. You can, in a way, win the game with religion. But moreover, the way it spread during the beta as well was a little bit problematic. Again, we sort of saw a snowballing, a YouTube algorithmic style of snowballing, if you will, where once you built up a base level, the potential to grow was exponential and difficult to pull under control. And that, of course, impacted the game, because if you got the one dominant religion, it was very hard to fight back against that as an opponent. Great for you as the player, but not so good to be on the receiving end of that. Last but not least, and I don't think we should discount this one, my number 5 thing that we don't fully know enough about in Humankind, it's multiplayer. And this matters. I'm not a huge multiplayer experiencer. I wanted to say player, but it just sounded odd. I'm not a huge multiplayer player. In really any 4X game, but I do appreciate the need for a solid base for multiplayer, not only for wide lobbies and the sort of net code and supports that are needed at the back end for that, but even just for a more casual 1, 2, 3 people want to play a quick game of Humankind together. This matters. It matters not only for friends and people wanting to play together that way, but also for the game's long-term viability to live within the community. There needs to be a viable multiplayer network and community behind Humankind. So I'm really interested to see quite a few things that come out of the full release for the game, which is, like I say, really only days away. But that multiplayer one will be really, really important. One thing that could be concerning for us is the fact that it hasn't been tested at large yet. It was not available in the Victor Open Dev or the developer's version before that. It was not available in the closed beta in any way, not even to a smaller group of people, not within a certain region, so we haven't yet been able to beta test this. And if sales, pre-orders, and wishlist statistics are anything to go by for Humankind, I think we can expect this to be Amplitude Studios' most significant release ever. And that will put a lot of pressure on potential multiplayer servers. So this is definitely one to watch, and we'll have to stay tuned and wait for that. If you're considering pre-ordering the game, I would encourage you to reflect on some of the things I've covered today in making that decision. And until next time, everybody, take care, and I'll see you then for more Humankind. Bye-bye.